What you are about to hear is not a conspiracy theory, but a suppressed sociological truth so dangerous that its original researcher had his tenure revoked, and his life's work buried in the unmarked archives of a now-defunct university. Within the next minutes, you will understand the invisible script that has governed the lives of millions of men. A script that explains why the woman you built a life with can seemingly overnight become a stranger dedicated to its dismantling. By the end of this, you will possess the one thing the modern world denies you: the predictive framework to see the matron's revolt coming not as a personal failure, but as a historical pattern playing out through her, granting you the clarity to protect what you have built and navigate the chaos with a philosopher's calm. Before we begin, if you're serious about personal growth, not just the comforting lies but the brutal, unvarnished truth, then you'll find real value in my ebook, The Black Book of Human Nature. It's a practical manual that breaks down the suppressed truths of human behavior, giving you the tools to finally understand yourself in the world more deeply. The link is in the pinned comment. Imagine a man we'll call James. He is 48 years old. For 22 years, he has built a life with his wife Sarah. They have two children, one in college, one a senior in high school. The house, which was once a cacophony of soccer practices, school plays, and teenage drama, is growing quiet. James sees this as the reward for 2 decades of grinding work, of missed promotions he took to stay close to home, of quiet sacrifices made for the stability of his family. He looks at Sarah and sees the partner with whom he is about to embark on a new, quieter chapter. He feels a sense of joy, of accomplishment, a belief that the hardest miles are behind them. But Sarah is changing in ways he cannot comprehend. The shared jokes now fall flat. Her gaze, when it lands on him, is no longer one of familiarity, but of appraisal, and he is found wanting. She spends more time on her phone in new fitness classes with new friends he doesn't know. She speaks a new language of self-actualization and unmet needs. Then on a Tuesday as ordinary as any other, she sits across from him at the kitchen table, the same table where they've shared thousands of meals, and says the words that detonate his reality. "I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I need to find myself." James' world shatters. This isn't the dramatic betrayal of an affair, though that may come later. This is something far more cold, far more systematic. It is the betrayal of a shared project, the unilateral dissolution of a treaty he didn't know was up for renegotiation. His story is not unique. It is an epidemic, and it has a name. It is the matron's revolt. This phenomenon is not a modern invention of therapy culture. It is a biological and sociological imperative that has been documented and subsequently suppressed for decades. Our story begins not in a divorce court, but in the hallowed, dusty halls of the University of Chicago in the late 1950s. A brilliant, troubled sociologist named Dr. Alan P. Beckman was given a grant to study post-war family stability. What he discovered was so unsettling it cost him his career. Beckman, analyzing decades of demographic data, identified a distinct and sharp spike in marital dissolution initiated by women between the ages of 38 and 45, specifically after their youngest child reached a threshold of independence around age 16 or 17. He called this cluster of behaviors terminal nest syndrome, but his private notes reveal a more dramatic term: the matron mutiny. Beckman's theory posited that the female investment in the maternal role was so all-consuming that its conclusion created a psychic vacuum. In this vacuum, a woman's assessment of her mate shifts dramatically. The provider, the stable father, the reliable husband. Qualities that were paramount during the child-rearing years are suddenly recategorized as liabilities. They represent boredom, a lack of passion, and a reminder of a self that was sacrificed. Beckman's paper was peer-reviewed and accepted for publication in the American Sociological Review. Then it vanished. The grant was pulled. The journal issue was mysteriously recalled for methodological concerns. Beckman was quietly let go in 1961. His research was only unearthed decades later by a researcher who himself was going through a divorce and went looking for answers in the archives. finding Beckman's sealed boxes marked for destruction. This is the first thread of the band theory. To understand the revolt, we must first understand the prison. The female loyalty paradigm for the first half of a woman's life is not primarily to a man, but to the project of the nest. This is a deep instinctual biological drive. Think of the immense physiological and psychological effort of gestation, childbirth, and nurturing a helpless infant into a viable human being. For 20 years, a woman's identity is subsumed by this project. Her choice of mate is on a primal level a selection of the optimal genetic and provisioning partner for this project. He is the cornerstone of the nest. During these years, his utility is clear, and her loyalty to the shared project ensures a functional, if not always passionately happy, alliance. This is the period of reliability, of shared purpose, the joy of building something together. But what happens when the project is complete? When the last fledgling is testing its wings, the cornerstone of the nest suddenly becomes just a stone, a piece of the furniture. This is the moment of the great shift. The loyalty that was once vested in the project and by extension its chief architect is now unum. It must find a new object. And in our modern world, that new object is almost invariably the self. Let's look at the cold hard data that Beckman first glimpsed and that modern statistics brutally confirm. According to a landmark 2015 study by the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, the divorce rate for couples over 50 has doubled since 1990, even as the overall divorce rate has declined. This is the gray divorce revolution. And who is initiating these divorces? A staggering 66% of the time, it is the woman. Think about that. In an age bracket where one might expect maximum stability, women are ending marriages at an unprecedented rate. But the story gets even more specific. Dr. Susan L. Brown, a co-author of that study, notes that the tipping point is profoundly linked to the departure of children. The nest empties and the foundation cracks. This isn't about men abandoning their families for younger women, the classic midlife crisis trope. This is a female-driven phenomenon. It is a calculated, often coldly executed withdrawal from a contract that she feels has expired. The language used in these divorces is telling. It is not typically "he was abusive" or "he was unfaithful." The language is one of emotional dissatisfaction. We grew apart. He didn't meet my emotional needs. I need to find my happiness. This is the language of the great reframing, where the man's previous reliability is retroactively classified as emotional neglect. His dedication to providing is recast as absenteeism. His calm stability is relabeled as a lack of passion. It is a rewriting of marital history to justify the present revolt. History is littered with the wreckage of this pattern, often visible only when we know to look for it. Consider the case of the late Roman Republic. We focus on the legions and the emperors, but the social decay was just as potent within the home. The historian Tacitus in his Annals laments the decline of the matrona, the revered Roman matron. By the 1st century AD, with the empire secure and wealth unprecedented, a new phenomenon emerged. Aristocratic women divorcing their aging statesman husbands not for other men but for independence. They were taking their dowies and living on their own, pursuing political influence, patronage of the arts and personal affairs. The Stoic philosopher Seneca the Younger wrote scathingly of these women, accusing them of valuing libertas over patas, freedom over duty and loyalty. The secure, sprawling empire had emptied their nest of its traditional purpose, and they revolted. Jump forward to Victorian England. The ideal of the angel in the house was a cultural straitjacket designed to contain this very energy. But when a woman's children were grown, a curious thing often happened. She might become a spiritualist, a suffragette, or in the most dramatic cases like that of Lady Caroline Norton, she would use her sharp intellect to campaign for the rights of women, effectively revolting against the very legal system her husband represented. Her marital life was famously unhappy, and after her children were grown, she dedicated herself not to her husband, but to breaking down the laws that had bound her. Her loyalty shifted from her family unit to the cause of the female self. These are not anomalies. They are historical precedents for the matron's revolt. Let me tell you another story, one that illustrates the shocking visceral nature of this shift. A man named Robert, a historian himself, came to me after his wife of 25 years left. He described the moment he knew it was over. It wasn't a fight. It was a vacation, their first trip alone after their youngest left for university. They were in a beautiful coastal town in Italy. He was filled with a sense of joy and renewal, pointing out the ancient architecture, the stunning views. He turned to her, wanting to share the moment, and saw her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated boredom. And then she said with a sigh that seemed to come from the bottom of a well of disappointment, "Is this it? Is this what we worked for all those years? To stand here and look at old buildings together?" For Robert, it was a moment of profound shock. This was the woman who had once stayed up with him all night talking about their dreams, who had built a family with him. Now the life they had built was a source of contempt to her. The shared memories were not a foundation but a chain. She wasn't seeing the ancient beauty. She was seeing the ghost of her own sacrificed youth, and she was blaming him for it. Her loyalty had already departed. It had transferred to a phantom future self, a self unburdened by his presence. Robert's story is the story of thousands of men who are bewildered, heartbroken, and financially eviscerated by a process they never saw coming. The initial phase of the revolt is not loud. It is silent. It is a quiet internal transfer of allegiance. The joy she once derived from family birthdays, from Christmases, from the mundane rhythm of domestic life evaporates. It is replaced by a restless curiosity about a life she feels she missed. She begins to invest in herself with a fervor that seems alien to the man who knew her as a mother and a wife. The gym memberships, the yoga retreats, the new social circles, the therapy sessions focused entirely on her trauma, her needs, her journey. This is the infrastructure of the new loyalty. The man observing this often feels a sense of pride or relief. She's finding herself. He thinks this is healthy. He does not realize he is cheering on the very process that is making him obsolete. He is financing his own replacement by a concept, her autonomous self. This is the cruelest trick of the revolt. It uses the language of empowerment and self-care as a moral justification for what is at its core a brutal realignment of resources and loyalty. The man's reliability, his steadfastness, is now the anchor holding her ship in a harbor she desperately wants to escape. And what does one do with an anchor? One cuts it loose. So what is the root of this? Is it mere capriciousness? Is it, as our competitor might crudely say, women going crazy? No. The foundation lies in a terrifying biological and psychological truth. Evolutionary psychologists refer to the concept of perimenopausal zest. As a woman's reproductive years wane, a profound shift occurs. The hormonal drive that once oriented her toward nurturing and attachment begins to fade. And in its place can arise a surge of androgenic energy, a desire for autonomy, for agency, for a final chapter defined by her own terms, not by the needs of others. This is not a pathology. It is a biological transition as significant as puberty. The problem is that modern society provides no healthy container for this energy. There are no rites of passage, no respected social roles for the post-maternal woman. She is left with a void, and into that void rushes a toxic culture that tells her her happiness is the highest moral good and any constraint on it, especially a husband who represents her old life, is oppression. This is the spark that ignites the revolt. The shock that men experience is the shock of being reevaluated by a new unforgiving metric. The provider is no longer needed. The father has done his job. What are you now? If your answer is merely her husband, you are standing on very, very thin ice. This is the bleak picture, the identification of the disease, the historical precedent, the cold data, and the psychological mechanism. We have stood at the edge of the abyss and looked in. We have seen James at the kitchen table and Robert on the Italian coast. We have exhumed Dr. for Beckman's banned research. You now understand that what you may be experiencing or what you fear is not a personal failing but a predictable, almost archetypal storm. But knowledge of the storm is only the first step. The critical question, the question that every man listening is now asking with a sense of dread and desperate hope is this: is it inevitable? And if not, how do you stop it? How do you armor your own life against this coming hurricane? The answers are not what you think. They do not lie in controlling her, in begging, or in redoubling your efforts as a provider. The solution, the only solution, lies in a radical and philosophical re-engineering of your own identity and your understanding of the world. It is a path that is difficult, demanding, and requires you to embrace a truth more unsettling than the revolt itself. Now, we will move from diagnosis to the antidote. We will delve into the forbidden strategies that can inoculate a marriage against this revolt, not through manipulation, but through a formidable and unshakable personal transformation. You will learn about the triad of invulnerability, the three pillars that make a man impervious to this shift. We will explore the dark psychological principle of objective value and how to cultivate it. And I will reveal the single most important question you must be able to answer affirmatively before your wife's 40th birthday. A question that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with unshakable purpose. The storm is coming for every man. The question is, will you be the one left shattered in the wreckage, or will you be the eye of the hurricane itself? The realization that the matron's revolt is not a personal failure, but a historical and biological storm can be a source of cold comfort. It explains the chaos, but it does not stop the roof from tearing off. You now stand at the most critical juncture a man can face, the moment between understanding the tempest and deciding how to meet it. The path of the average man is one of panic and reaction. He begs, he negotiates, he promises to change, he becomes emotional, he seeks to control her movements, her friends, her spending. In doing so, he commits the ultimate sin in the face of the revolt. He confirms her every suspicion. He proves that his stability was a facade, that his strength was contingent on her compliance. He becomes a source of drama, a problem to be managed, a dependent, not a partner. His pleas for the past to be restored are heard by her as the desperate cries of a jailer watching his prisoner walk away. This reaction is the fertilizer for the revolt, accelerating the very process he seeks to halt. It is a guaranteed path to a costly, bitter, and emotionally devastating defeat, where he will lose not only his family, but his dignity, his financial security, and his sense of self. But there is another path. It is not a path of manipulation or game playing. It is a path of profound philosophical and unyielding self-reinstruction. It is the path of becoming the eye of the hurricane, the still, calm, immovable center around which the storm rages, powerless to break you. To become the eye, you must first annihilate the man you have become. For the past 2 decades, your identity has been a trinity: provider, father, husband. These are external contingent roles. Your value as a provider is contingent on the economy and your health. Your value as a father is contingent on your children's presence and dependence. Your value as a husband is contingent on your wife's continued endorsement. The revolt is in essence the revocation of that endorsement. When these external validations are stripped away, what remains? For most men, the answer is a terrifying emptiness. This is the void that the storm fills with despair. Therefore, the first and non-negotiable pillar of the triad of invulnerability is the cultivation of an unshakable core identity. This is an identity built not on what you do for others, but on who you are as a man, defined by a personal code, a mission, and an internal scorecard. Think of the Roman legionary not in the heat of battle, but in the quiet of the camp. His identity was not soldier of the 13th Legion. It was the disciplinina, the relentless discipline, the order of his kit, the sharpness of his blade, the strength of his body, the loyalty to his brothers. The legion could be reassigned. The battle could be lost. But his disciplinina remained. This is what you must forge. Your mission cannot be make my wife happy or be a good dad. Those are outcomes, not missions. Your mission must be something that ignites your soul independent of your family. It could be building a business, mastering a craft, writing a philosophical treatise, achieving a physical pinnacle, or creating art. It is the thing you would pursue even if you were alone on a deserted island because the pursuit itself defines you. This is not selfishness. It is the foundation of genuine strength. A man with a mission is a man who cannot be made redundant by an empty nest. He is a man whose purpose predates his family and will outlast it. When the restlessness of the revolt begins to stir in your wife, she will not encounter a void waiting to be filled by her drama, but the solid, imposing wall of a man who is already complete. Let me tell you a story of two men facing the same storm. The first is David, a successful accountant. When his wife Linda began her revolt, the new friends, the therapy speak, the cold distance, he did what he thought was right. He tried to win her back. He planned romantic dates. She canceled. He bought her gifts. She returned. He asked endlessly, "What's wrong? What can I do?" He became anxious, needy, and emotionally volatile. He was trying to fix the U.S. problem, but in doing so, he made himself the problem. Linda's response was a textbook case of hypergama's contempt. She told her friends, "He's so pathetic, he has no life of his own." The divorce was finalized within a year. David is now a ghost, living in a small apartment, half his income gone, wondering what happened. The second man is Mark, an engineer. He saw the same signs in his wife Sarah, the subtle disdain, the new yoga obsession, the conversations that always circled back to her unmet needs. But Mark did not react to Sarah. He reacted to his own mission. He had always wanted to build a classic boat from a hole. He now dedicated 2 hours every single evening to that project in his garage. He stopped being available for every one of her mood swings. He was polite, engaged when they spoke, but his emotional energy was invested in the boat. He started waking up at 5:00 a.m. to train for a marathon, a lifelong goal. He didn't do this to make Sarah jealous or to win her back. He did it because it was who he was always meant to be. The shift was seismic. Sarah's coldness was met with a calm, purposeful indifference. Her attempts to provoke an emotional reaction failed. He was no longer a participant in her drama. He was an observer of it, and a curious thing happened. The more he focused on his own mission, the more curious she became. She started coming into the garage asking about the boat. The man she thought was a predictable, boring provider was revealing himself to be a craftsman, an athlete, a man of depth and mystery. The revolt didn't just stop. It reversed course. Mark became the eye of the hurricane. By refusing to be drawn into the storm, he calmed it. The second pillar of the triad is the principle of objective value. This is a concept that runs counter to everything we are taught about relationships. We are told that love is unconditional, that value is subjective. This is a dangerous fantasy. The brutal red pill truth is that all human relationships, especially the romantic kind, are governed by a constant, silent assessment of value. During the childbearing years, your value was objective and clear. Provision, stability, safety. The revolt begins when that value is perceived to have depreciated to zero. Your wife is now assessing you by a new unconscious value metric: inspiration, passion, and what the evolutionary psychologists call mate value. Are you a man who other women would still find desirable? Are you a man who commands respect in your tribe? Or are you a comfortable piece of furniture? This is not about cheating. It is about the raw biological calculus of attraction. A man who lets himself go physically, who has no social life outside his wife, who has no stories, no adventures, no frame of his own, has an objective value of zero on this new market. He is a depreciated asset. To become invulnerable, you must cultivate an objective value that is visible and undeniable. This begins with the physical. Your body is the temple of your will. A soft body speaks of a soft will. You do not need to become a bodybuilder, but you must become strong, lean, and vital. This physical transformation is not for her. It is a daily ritual of self-respect. It broadcasts a powerful nonverbal message. I value myself too highly to let myself decay. Next is your social value. Do you have a band of brothers? Do you have men who respect you, with whom you undertake challenges? A man alone is a vulnerable man. A man integrated into a male hierarchy is a formidable social entity. Finally, there is your value in the world. Are you still climbing? Are you still learning? Are you someone of consequence? This is the power of what the ancient Greeks called arete, the relentless pursuit of excellence and the fulfillment of your potential. When a woman undergoing the revolt looks at a man who is physically vital, socially connected, and professionally respected, she is not looking at a used-up provider. She is looking at a prize. The calculus changes. The thought of discarding him becomes not an act of liberation, but the greatest mistake of her life. History provides a stark case study in the power of objective value versus the failure of reactive emotion. Consider the fate of King Henry VIII of England and his first wife Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was by all accounts a faithful, intelligent, and politically astute woman. But when she failed to produce a male heir, her primary value to Henry as the mother of a dynasty was nullified. Henry's solution was not to work on their emotional connection. It was to find a new, younger wife who could provide that objective value. Now consider a different historical figure. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He was married to Empress Phina the Younger, a woman history records as notoriously unfaithful and who was rumored to have participated in a revolt against him. The gossip of Rome was a constant storm around him, but Marcus Aurelius did not react with hysterical jealousy or public lamentations. He became the ultimate eye of the hurricane. He immersed himself in his duty, leading the legions on the dangerous Danube frontier. And in the quiet of his tent by candlelight, he wrote what would become Meditations, the greatest work of Stoic philosophy. He focused entirely on his own virtue, his own duty, his own inner citadel. He understood that the only thing he could control was his own character and his response to events. By refusing to be drawn into the drama, by maintaining his impeccable objective value as a philosopher king and a military commander, he not only preserved his empire but his sanity. Phina, for all her intrigues, remained by his side until her death. He was the unmoved mover, the center that held. His power was not in controlling her, but in his absolute command of himself. This brings us to the third and most subtle pillar, transcendent frame control. The frame is the unspoken context of a relationship. It is the reality that you both accept as true. For years, the frame has been the family project. The revolt is an attempt to shatter that frame and replace it with a new one, the journey of the self. Most men, when faced with this, either fight it directly, which comes across as controlling, or they capitulate and enter her frame, becoming a supporting character in her journey of self-discovery, a role that inevitably leads to being written out of the script. The man who masters frame control does neither. He acknowledges her new reality without accepting it. He listens to her talk about her need for space or her emotional journey with the calm, detached curiosity of an anthropologist studying a strange tribal ritual. He does not get emotional. He does not agree or disagree. He might say, "I see you're exploring a lot of new things right now." This simple statement does not fight her frame. It observes it from a higher vantage point. It maintains his position as the stable, grounded reality against which her temporary storm is measured. His own frame, the one he must live and breathe, is one of unwavering purpose and unshakable values. His frame is not "I need you to stay," but "This is the life I am building," a life of purpose, strength, and excellence. You are welcome to share in it, but its integrity is not negotiable. This is a transcendent frame because it is not dependent on her actions. When she threatens to leave, the man with frame control does not panic. He might calmly say, "I would regret that decision as I am committed to our marriage, but I am committed to my own path and integrity above all else. The choice is yours." This is the language of a king, not a beggar. It transfers the burden of the destructive choice back to her where it belongs. And in doing so, it often makes that choice unthinkable. She is no longer revolting against a jailer. She is contemplating abandoning a king. The final and most inspiring part of this journey is the realization that navigating the matron's revolt successfully is not about saving a marriage at all costs. It is about becoming a man who does not need the marriage to be whole. This is the ultimate paradox. The only way to potentially save the relationship is to reach a state of mind where you are perfectly prepared to lose it. This is the philosophical core of the black pill. It is the acceptance of a harsh but ultimately liberating reality. Your happiness, your worth, your mission cannot be held hostage by another person's emotional state. When you achieve this, when your core identity is solid, your objective value is high and your frame is transcendent, you achieve a state of invulnerability. The revolt, when it comes, will break against you like waves against a cliff. You will have given your wife the one thing the chaos of her transition truly needs. Not a reactive partner, but a rock. Not a man who mirrors her confusion, but a man who offers a compelling alternative to it. You become the lighthouse, not the shipwreck. This transformation is the hardest thing you will ever do. It requires you to slaughter the sacred cow of the happy, comfortable, passive life, and embrace the disciplined, purposeful, and often solitary path of the philosopher-warrior. It is a path walked by the Stoics, by the samurai, by the knights who swore oaths to codes higher than their own hearts. The joy you will find will not be the fleeting joy of external validation, but the profound, lasting joy of self-mastery. The reliability you offer will no longer be that of a dependable employee, but that of a force of nature. The inspiration you provide will be the inspiration of a man fully actualized. The matron's revolt is a test. Most men will fail it and their lives will be diminished. But for the few who have the courage to face the storm, not with fear, but with the grim determination to build themselves into something unbreakable, it becomes the forge in which a truly formidable life is finally and irrevocably tempered.